Hello, everybody. Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
Why'd you say it like that?
I don't know. I suppose I feel faintly hysterical, really. We're number 39, I think.
39th week of Sounding the Shallows.
No.
I can't even remember
Still
why we
haven't
called
got
it
to
Sounding the
shore.
Shallows. Never mind. Anyway, we had some really interesting responses to talking about dreams,
Oh, we did.
I have to say.
Our favourite. Read our favourite.
All right, here's one. Let me tell you about one of our prayer groups' dream. She walked the whole length of the Leeds to Liverpool Canal in 12 days, age 65, as a pilgrimage between cancer treatments. She dreamed that she'd been out for a walk and had left her slippers on and put her walking boots on top of them. When she got home, she couldn't get her boots off because of the slippers. But this is the interesting bit. Boris Johnson came into her house, knelt down, and took off her boots for her. Now, I expect someone to interpret that very, very shortly.
I think the home group did try and interpret it, but just ended up in hysterics, really. Yeah, and you know, the other thing we were talking about last week, we were talking about that really amazing bit that you find where it says that God is not willing that any should be lost. And somebody sent a song, the words of a song, Only a Shadow. And it's just one of the verses, really. The dreams we share today, O Lord, are only a shadow of your dreams for us. Only a shadow of your dreams for us, if we but follow you.
Which is what we were trying to say last
It is, really.
week, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, this week has been full of things, general things. I mean, small things like the budget, and there's this up-and-coming interview with Oprah, which seems to be shaking everyone. But
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that for me, it's been quite a week in my head. I mean, there's a bit of hope now because we're both 3 weeks on after our vaccines, so our little immune soldiers are getting all ready to fight.
My 3 weeks ended at, I can't remember what time, about 12 o'clock on Sunday. 3 weeks since
so
my...
your little immune soldiers are waking up and...
yeah, I hope so, yeah.
But you know what? I think if I was really analysing the week, I would say that a fear had crept in despite all that. And it's this one case of the Brazilian variant that has not been tracked down. You know, for people who are not in the UK, there were a few people came from Brazil via Paris, and 5 of the 6 have been tracked down. They've tracked and traced and all the rest of it, and there's one that hasn't yet. And I suddenly thought, you know, all the stories where you have the king and the king says, search the land and find it and stamp it out. And I think that's how I kind of felt. Not the person, but this one mutant variant.
What did that make you feel exactly then?
Frightened.
Frightened,
absolutely. And I found myself thinking, well, that is utterly ridiculous. The idea of this virus getting on the train to Sedgefield in the northeast is rather from the southeast. And yet there was that sense that just when things feel secure and hopeful, there's this horrible little thing.
I think it's nothing new, is it? An irrational fear is quite powerful, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
If you're in power, especially.
Yeah, the need to stamp it out. We've had it all through the Bible, let alone all through general history, haven't we? I mean, there's Pharaoh, who gets very, very worried in Egypt that there are too many Israelites because of Joseph going there, and then his family, and then their family having family, and so on. And suddenly there's loads of them. And what an extraordinary thing.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of love the romantic story about the baby Moses being put in the bulrushes, but it's a horrible story.
Yeah, it's
all
ghastly,
baby boys.
Yeah.
Are
And
just
Herod,
well, actually,
one of our traditional baddies, again, all baby boys, actually, under the age of 2, I think it was.
Horrible.
And of course, Moses survived and brought life. I mean, amazing, really.
Yeah.
Moses was the one who, in the end, led the Israelites out of Egypt.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think there's something in me that has always been staggered by the fact that this baby made it and then made some pretty bad mistakes.
Yeah.
and then did something phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
And of course, Jesus survived. I mean,
Jesus survived, yes.
I mean,
yes.
Herod wiped out.
Yeah.
And I've always struggled with this, and I know you have too. You know that I think every Christian struggles with the idea of the loss of babies in Bethlehem.
Oh, it's horrible.
But at the same time, Jesus did survive, and then of course, that we're talking about stamping it out as though it was like a virus for Jews in Palestine, wasn't it? Because there was a need to try to stamp it out, to stamp Jesus out. And then those 12, we're told, by Pentecost, there's about 120 of them. And then from there's thousands of them.
Yeah.
And it feels as though there's a tremendous, we will do anything now to stamp it out. So, of course, with Stephen, there was just a load of lies told about him.
Stephen, who was stoned to death.
Stephen, who was stoned to death.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that stoning, because of Paul watching it, meant that, I think it says it best in Acts, really. Some faithful followers of the Lord buried Stephen and mourned very much. And at that time, the church in Jerusalem suffered terribly. And all of the Lord's followers, except the apostles, were scattered everywhere in Judea and Samaria. And then Saul started making a lot of trouble, went from house to house, arresting men and women, putting them in jail, threatening to kill the Lord's followers, went to the high priest, asked for letters to the Jewish leaders in Damascus. And he did this because he wanted to take to Jerusalem any man or woman who'd accepted the Lord's way. I mean, do you remember in the middle of this pandemic, Boris talking about whack-a-mole?
Whack-a-mole?
Yeah.
No, I
well,
don't.
It's a game.
Is
you
it?
know,
Yeah.
Have you ever seen it?
No, I
Ever,
haven't.
Faith?
Tell me about
come
whack-a-mole.
on, where you have a you have a whole load of holes, and then a mole pops up, and you try and hit it with a mallet. No, no, never mind. You try and do that quite quickly.
Oh, I see. You're stamping, trying
You're
to stamp
stamping out the
all
moles.
that, yeah.
And I think Paul was playing whack-a-mole. He just desperately was frustrated. He was frenzied. And I know to some extent, it was a feeling he was doing right and that he was going to preserve Judaism under the Roman Empire.
But it was something else, wasn't it? And I've always been interested in this. Paul was there when Stephen was stoned to death. So we know he was there. In fact, he was holding people's coats, wasn't he? Which always intrigued me. The odd thing about that is that Saul, as he was then, watched Stephen die, saw his face, heard what he said, saw the light in his face, and I think, from what we hear later, he thought, I have all the learning you could have, really, as a Jew trained very carefully in the law. He's got something I haven't got. And something in him said, either I stop this or I go and find it. And that was a choice that he must have made at that time, I think.
Do you think then he was trying to sort of stamp it out in himself, you mean? Stamp out this beginning of a feeling that maybe, just maybe, he got the whole thing wrong? Is that what you mean? That he... Because, we're told, as I just read, that he was even more frenzied in his determination to...
Yeah, we don't know. But, when he finally was confronted on the Damascus Road, one of the things that this vision, or Jesus himself, said to him was, you are fighting against the thing that you want. You're kicking against the goads.
Oh, that's what, yeah.
You know you want it.
Wow.
So why are you persecuting me? It wasn't just, why can't you stop hurting me? It was, why would you want to do this? Why will you not look at the passion that is inside you and follow it? And I don't think he's alone in that. I think a lot of people I've known, especially very tough people, very active, very able people, Um, Something in their heart lifts and rises when it comes to faith, perhaps, but they cannot bring themselves to follow that. It's very difficult to, I think.
What was the thing that I remember? It was an American poet, and you loved what he said, and it was connected with this really.
Well, it was a puzzling thing he said. I don't know. I don't know what he meant actually. His name, I've got his name here. His name is Carl Sandburg. And he wrote this line: "Only the fireborn understand blue. Only the fireborn understand blue." And I actually rang up a friend who's an engineer, and because I was so interested in this, and I said, well, could that mean anything technically? And he said, the thing about fire is that you probably think of it as being red or yellow or gold, but actually the heart of fire, the place where it really, really burns the hottest, can be blue.
Yeah.
And I thought, is it possible, what he's suggesting, that only those whose lives are kind of forged in, I don't know, some kind of central blaze of pain or sorrowful regret, they can really, only they can understand what raging sadness really, really means.
And you think that at that moment when he met Jesus on the road, that it was that sort of cataclysmic heat that...
I don't know. What do I know? I just know there are problems with reading the Damascus Road story. One is the Bible, and the fact. Sorry, Bible.
Oh yeah.
Well, the fact that
Can I just point out that is where you read the Damascus Road
I
story?
know. But there has been an automatic suction process going on over the centuries, which removes the passion from.
Yes, I think that's true.
Of the Bible.
I think that's true.
So when Jesus confronted him on the road, I mean, I can tell you what he didn't say, because the Bible tells me what he didn't say.
Okay.
He didn't say, "Saul, I would like to point out that you're behaving in a very aggressive and punitive manner to Christians all over the place," or, I don't know, here's a list of your sins in alphabetical order, or your attitude leaves a great deal to be desired, or any sort of sane, confronting thing. I suspect it was more Jesus saying, and he said it to many people over the years, "You're hurting me."
Yeah.
Why? Tell me why you want to do that.
Yeah.
Why do you want to persecute me? Why are you trying to stop me existing? I know what happened. I know you saw Stephen's face. I know you want that. I think that's what happened.
You're absolutely right, Adrian, because it is easy to start to not think of that voice as being the same old Jesus. You know that poem that we were reading, the C.S. Lewis poem that says you need to go to the Jesus who, what was it? He was so tall and a certain weight and spoke
That's
Aramaic
right, yeah.
and had a trade. And I think it's very easy for us to lose the fact that that's the voice. It was a voice. There's no doubt.
Person.
It was a person.
It was person,
Jesus
yeah.
talking to him. And that, would you think that was the first time Paul had met him? I mean, I think it was.
I imagine it was. The interesting thing about the Damascus Road experience is that when you use it as a phrase, as people do, you know, I had a Damascus. Paul is actually, or Saul, is one of the people who didn't have a Damascus Road experience in that sense, because he already had within him, and we've known this from many people we've known and other people in the Bible, it was in them already.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's
so
right.
They didn't do an about turn. They may have done in their response to it, but what Jesus was doing and what he did to other people like Zacchaeus and others, and to many people in this age, was saying, look, what you really want, what you know you want, you're not going for it. You are kicking against the thing that really means something to you. And it's very difficult to face that.
I've often thought, Adrian, about Saul, doesn't really matter, does it, sitting in his room.
Yeah.
You know, and not only just thinking about his encounter with Jesus, but thinking about every man and woman that he's dragged out of their home in order to be punished. And to think, I didn't just get it wrong. I hurt people.
Yeah.
I caused them to be hurt because I was so sure that I was right, and that actually what I thought was the virus is the vaccine, is the thing that brings life.
That's a very good way of putting it, I think. Yeah.
It must have been awful.
But do you think he knew that then? I mean, he after that encounter, and the other people who were with him didn't hear anything of that conversation, did they?
No, they
but
didn't.
When
they
he
saw
was,
him go blind, didn't they, and had to carry
and had to take him, and he sat in this dark hut for however long it was, thinking about that. Facing what he already knew, or what he suspected.
I don't think so. You think?
I don't know.
I would have thought that was I mean, he was on his way to Damascus to drag them out of their homes. That's what we're told. And I mean, he may have been thinking, thank goodness I didn't get to Damascus. Look what else I would have done.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Stephen and Jesus, to meet both of them and to be so profoundly affected. And I mean, I know that you've connected that experience, the intensity of that experience, with the fact that he could then go on and lead that life. Such a life of sacrifice and of...
Well, going back to the only the fireborn understand blue, I think you're absolutely right. I think in the darkness, he saw what he was, what he could have become, how close he came to destroying the person he was going to end up giving his entire life to. And the pungency of that regret was so powerful that in the end it was what fueled him. But the significant thing, of course, is that he wasn't self-pitying. He didn't, and this happens sometimes with us. You just kind of go into an awful, soft, dippy self.
No.
When Ananias came eventually, having said to God, "Duh, I don't think I want to go and see him," and said those immortal words, "Brother Saul." He knew it was all right. He knew it was okay.
And he was always being talked of as being a dry old stick. He was full of passion. He was full of passion to stamp out what he thought was wrong, and he's full of passion to put it right. Yeah.
I wonder if we've just moved too far from this kind of heartfelt personal encounter that things like the prodigal son, where there's so much feeling. I think we need a bit of a richer blood flowing into the veins of what we talk about, call the interaction with God. And coming to Jesus and coming back to Jesus is not just listing sins and having them ticked off in some kind of log. It's got to be about knowing that in hurting others and ourselves, we hurt him, and we risk a relationship that could mean so much to us. I don't know. We do get confused.
Yeah. I mean, I know, you've talked so much about, we have, those lines, the truth will set you free. And I mean, Paul thought he knew the truth, didn't he? He had all of his learning to tell him exactly what was right and what was wrong.
That's right.
But it wasn't till after that encounter that in any way he was set free, was it?
And one of the problems with being set free, of course, is that you don't know precisely what to do. But heaven preserve us from people who are set free, who know the truth but are not set free, because they will lash out all over the place and
stamp about. Trying to knock out stuff in you that doesn't fit with what they...
The trouble is, I mean, faith, if we want to call it that, is and never has been an easy thing to understand. I don't think people say it is. It's not an exact science. I was writing down very quickly before we finish about these things people will hear. I made a list of them. This is the thing sometimes we
I
hear.
like your lists. Well, come on then.
Right. Christians, right. We should not doubt, but doubt is an essential aspect of faith. Humility is good, but can be a poor relative of pride. We're free in Christ, but we can't do this or that, or anything remotely bordering on what I just saw you doing. Heaven is definitely not up there in the sky above us, but we're pretty sure it's not in the Pacific Ocean just south of New Zealand, so where on earth is it? We must accept Adam and Eve were real living people, but only in a mythical sense. The good news is that nothing can separate us from the love of God in Christ. The bad news is it doesn't apply if we're goats, in which case eternity is looking a little bit bleak. It really isn't as simple as that.
I mean, the truth is, we started by talking about this variant. We started by talking about the fact that this Brazilian variant, the South African variant, there will always be dangerous variants. And I'm not talking about COVID. I'm talking about false teaching.
Yeah.
I'm talking about silliness. I'm talking about attractive, empty promises that threaten to counter the benefits of the truth. He warned us. Jesus said it's going to happen. You're going to get all this.
Yeah,
you're going to get people, the equivalent of people saying don't have the vaccine. You're going to get this. You're going to get it in your teaching in your churches. Just stay safe. Right back to what we were talking about with that Lewis poem. Back to him where it's safe.
Yeah, and we do know that two very different things can exist quite legitimately and both be true in our lives. And those apparent contradictions, I reckon, they're what make faith and the person of Jesus really fascinating. And it's also the reason why we have to be particularly careful and caring, I think, if we separate and offer others whatever tangled threads we've been untangling. Talk about
I hope
how
we've
things
untangled
really
some things and not actually made things. I'd love to hear what other people think about some of these things.
What they think. Yeah, I think whenever you'd start trying to deal with the truth in yourself, you reach an inchoate state, and it's very hard to put it into words. But anyway,
we'll go on tangling and untangling,
and
we'll talk to you next week.
Okay, those who are fireborn and those who are not, we wish you well.
Bye.
See you next week.